Hey guys, it's Kelly here again and welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my quarterly book wrap-up. Today I'll be sharing with you all of the books that I read from the month of April to the month of June and my thoughts on them. So last year I only did 2 wrap-ups, which were in the middle of the year and the end of the years. And because that was way too many books to talk about in one video, I decided to split them up into 4 this year, so I do quarterly wrap-ups. I have one for January, March, and February on my channel already, and today I'll be sharing with you the books that I read in April, May, and June. And I thought that this was going to be easier because I'll have less books to talk about for just 3 months, but these were April and May were my most read months, and I ended up reading the most books, so I have like 12 books to talk about, so I will try to get through them as quickly as I can. Most of them I've already talked about in another video that I'm going to link in the cards up above or in the description bar down below, which are new releases and my thoughts on them, whether they're worth the read or not. So if you want to check some of them out, I will mention each book that is mentioned in that video. So if you want more in-depth thoughts on those ones, I will link the video down below, but the rest I will talk about today. Without further ado, let's get started with Activation Degradation. This is a sci-fi story about this biological robot who works on a mine near Jupiter. One day the mine is attacked by invaders and his handler has sent the unit to check out, Unit 4, to check out the invaders, to kill them and find out more information because their database seems to be lacking. Unit 4 goes on this mission to find the invaders and possibly kill them, but ends up being captured by them, and things are not as they seem. The information that the handler is giving to Unit 4 is very different than what Unit 4 is discovering for itself, so it starts to question exactly what's going on. This was a great story. I really enjoyed it. I listened to it as an audiobook and I loved the narration as well. There's a hint of a romance there that is also really interesting, and it was well written, and it was really cool because the unit was actually trying to discover its emotional part, which was an interesting experience, and I've never actually seen that done in a book about robots, so I really enjoyed that part. It had an interesting ending. I am still a little bit conflicted on it, but overall the book was really great and I really enjoyed it. The next book that I finished is called The Cartographers, again another one that I've spoken about in the video for new releases. This follows Nell, who has a burning passion for cartography. Her mother was a cartographer, her father was a cartographer, and she wants to follow in their footsteps. As she's working with her dad, however, she discovers a weird map that she brings to the attention of her father, and he basically disowns her, he ruins her entire career, and their relationship just never healed from there on. She's kind of pushed out of the cartography world from her dad and his peers, and she just never really recovers and goes into a little bit of a depression and just doesn't really know what's going on and what she should do with her life. One day her dad dies under mysterious circumstances, and it turns out that the map that she found all those years ago, the trash map that ruined her entire relationship with her dad and ruined her career, turns out to be a lot more unique and interesting than she initially thought. So some weird stuff start happening and she tries to piece together exactly what's going on. I enjoyed this book quite a bit. It had a whole range of cast members who voiced the different characters, and I thought it was really interesting and well done. The story was a little bit generic. There's nothing mind-boggling and mind-blowing about it, but overall it was a really good read, really beautifully written, and it was interesting and I enjoyed it. Book number 3 was Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This one, again, I spoke about already. So, long story short, this is about Olivia, who is a young girl abandoned by her family in a group home. She can see ghosts and ghouls, and therefore she is not very famous and popular around the other girls. They kind of bully her, she doesn't fit in, and all she wants is a family and a place to belong. One day, a letter arrives in the group home, and she is invited by her uncle to rejoin their family in the Gallant manor. As she goes there, however, it turns out that things are not as they seem, and her uncle has died a long time ago, so nobody knows why or who invited her. Things start going weird and bad, and we follow Olivia as she's trying to figure out exactly what's going on and trying to stop the evil forces that are rising. This one was such a surprise to me. I went into it a little bit blind. Reading the synopsis, I thought that, you know, I don't really like magical realism books. I don't like when kids are younger in books and you get these magical houses. I don't like that personally. It's a little bit middle grade-ish. However, going into this book, it was so well done, so beautifully written. The narration was so amazing. It just brought the whole story alive, the characters alive, and I felt so creeped out at so many places in the book. It was just beautifully done, and I highly recommend it. Read it, and especially I highly recommend going the audiobook route as well, because it's just phenomenal. And I went to it expecting it to be like 3 stars. It ended up being a solid 5, and I would probably keep it as one of the best books that I read this year. The next book that I read was Aurora Burning by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I just combined their names there. This is the second book in the Aurora Cycle trilogy, and this is a YA sci-fi. I think I've spoken about this on a few occasions this far. This is the second installment. I enjoy these books. They're fun. They're very quick reads. They're easy to read as well. They're very cringy, I have to be honest. The writing style and the dialogue are just no. But the story is very interesting, and I just go through them so fast, and I'm invested in the story, and I want to find out more and how it ends. The first book, because this is the second book, but in the first book, you follow this band of misfits who are graduating a space academy, a space cadet academy, and they form this team, and they go on a mission and encounter a girl who has been frozen in space for 200 years. She has some very weird abilities and powers. It turns out that the whole galaxy is after her, so they make their escape, and everyone starts chasing them. So that's basically it. We try to figure out exactly how she got frozen, why she got frozen, what happened to her family 200 years ago, why she's so important, all these sort of stuff. These books have the most cringy dialogue that I've read in a long while, and they also have these band of very thirsty teenagers, and I feel really weird recommending it because of those things, because I really hate those things, but the story is really good. It's really interesting. I'm invested, so if you want to give it a shot, just don't go in expecting the world. Quite enjoy it, and I'm actually reading the third one now. The next book that I read is Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson. This is a non-fiction. It is a very short book. It was very famous, I think, here on BookTube in the beginning when I first discovered it. And I bought it ever since, and I hadn't read it. But now I was in this really weird non-fiction mood, so I decided to pick it up and give it a shot. And I absolutely loved it. This goes over very basic and very shallow detail things about astrophysics, because, you know, it's astrophysics for people in a hurry. It makes very good comparisons. It's written really in an interesting way, and it doesn't bore you. The only gripe that I have with this particular book and this style of writing a book is that if you are interested more in depth, you don't get that, and also it does gloss over some details, and there are a few spots where I don't know too much about the subject, and therefore I get a little bit confused, so I have to Google it to find out more information. But if you just want to get started in astrophysics and want to learn the basics and just, you know, dip your toes a little bit, this is I think a good way to start. So I really enjoyed this book, and this actually inspired me to pick up the next book that I'm going to talk about in a second, which was Black Hole Blues, and it also inspired me to buy a whole bunch of non-fiction books, which you can see on my channel because I have them in a haul, which I will link in the cards again. But yeah, I definitely recommend it if you're even a little bit interested in astrophysics. The next book that I'm going to talk about is called The First Sister. I already spoke about this in my video about new releases. However, I did a really horrible job explaining what this book is about, and I really don't think that I can actually redeem myself here today, because it is a really hard to explain book. So I'm gonna give it my best to try to just give you a very brief synopsis of what's going on, and if you decide that anything sounds interesting to you, then I would suggest picking it up. So this is a sci-fi book, but it reads like high fantasy at a lot of points. So the sci-fi book follows a range of characters. One is a religious type figure. She is the first sister. She has been tasked with a mission to spy on her new captain and milk them for information about a rebellion or something that is going on behind the shadows. The other character that we're following is a soldier who is from a different faction, I guess. He is a human soldier. His partner and longtime friend has defected and has become a traitor. So the soldier's mission is to find their traitorous friend, kill them, and continue their mission. And here and there we get little snippets of recordings from the soldier's friend and partner, and they are trying to explain exactly what happened and that led them to become a traitor. So you're following these three characters, and it's really confusing at times, and it's one of those books that the more you read, the more confused you get. Because the most on top of the story that I felt was probably at around the 20% mark, and from there on I just got really confused. However, I did really enjoy it. It was really interesting. It had a lot of political intrigue. It had a lot of things that were going on behind the shadows, so if you like those, then I would recommend this book. However, as I said, if you don't like a lot of sci-fi, if you don't like high fantasy, I would not recommend this, because this is a heavy book and it's probably for more adept readers to both sci-fi and fantasy, because as I said, it did read a little bit like high fantasy at times just because of the political system in a way. So yeah, I enjoyed this book. I would probably be picking up the second one by the end of the year. So yeah, the next book that I read is a Japanese fiction book, which is called No Longer Human. It has been really popular on BookTube and around all different people, and I did not enjoy this book. I think that the best explanation that I have is that I am just not smart enough for this book. This deals with a lot of things that, okay, let me put it this way. So you follow this character, you're in his head, and he constantly thinks of himself as unworthy, trash, monstrous. He thinks horrible things about himself. So he goes through his life and constantly talks about the awful things that he's done and why he's done them, and how he fails to connect to being a human and just living a normal life. In a sense, I do really relate to the idea of thinking of yourself as somebody who doesn't really deserve love, doesn't deserve anything positive in their life, and somebody who just completely messes up everything at every step that they take. However, as much as I related to the experiences of the character, I failed completely to relate to him as a character, which made the reading of this book really painful, kind of boring. So this was just not the book for me, but I know that a lot of people really love it. So as I said, I'm not smart enough for this book. Next up, I read Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which is again one that I mentioned about in my video about the new releases. Are they worth it? So this is a retelling of a Chinese myth about, I think, the moon goddess, how she drank the elixir and became immortal. We follow her daughter, who has grown up on the moon, kind of in a prison, hidden from everyone, and they're hiding her existence because she's not supposed to exist. One day, however, things happen and she needs to escape, so she's forced to leave the only home that she's known in order to protect her mother, and she needs to hide in the celestial kingdom, where she becomes basically a nobody, a peasant, and slowly, through wittiness and smarts and capabilities, works herself up into becoming the right hand for the Emperor Prince. This was a really beautifully told story. I would love to read the original myth that this was loosely inspired by, because it sounds really interesting and I really love Asian mythology. There was a romance in this book, which the typical love triangle romances that fantasy books usually have. Personally, I wasn't bothered by it, because if you've watched my channel, you know that I don't read romances. I don't like those. But I wasn't bothered by it. I like the characters, I really like the story. The only thing is that this is a duology, and the book ends in a way where almost everything gets resolved. So there's not a lot of loose ends that are left to be resolved in the second book, so I really don't know exactly what we're going to focus on in the next installment, but I did enjoy it and I would recommend it. The next book that I read is one that I spoke about previously in this video, and that is Black Hole Blues. This is a non-fiction book, kind of, it's not exactly a memoir or biography, but it follows the main scientists that prove Einstein's theory about gravitational waves. So we follow as they kind of a little bit about each and every one of their lives before they became this team that is supposed to prove gravitational waves, and we followed them through the different hardships that they endured trying to prove this theory, trying to build this instrument, I'm going to call it, or this practically a facility, but yeah, that they were trying to build it. It needed a lot of investment, a lot of people believing in it, and a lot of people just didn't, and a lot of people didn't even believe in black holes. So this was a really interesting read. The writing style was a little bit dry, but it's still interesting. I really loved the little bits and pieces and little facts that we get about different people's lives. I particularly really loved the stories, not the stories, but you know, the retellings of the life of Kip Thorne, because I think he's amazing and just brilliant, and I really enjoyed that part. And I really enjoyed finally seeing that it took 100 years to prove one theory and all of the hardship that it took to get to that point, and just it was really great. And if you're interested at all at the topic, I would recommend this book. It was quite easy and quite fast to get through, at least in Bulgarian. I don't know in English how it's gonna be, but yeah, it was a bit of a fast read. And also I was so in love with all of the information that I actually took notes, which I never do. I never take notes reading books, but yeah, I took notes about different people's lives, so I loved it, so definitely would recommend it. The next book I think I also mentioned in the new releases and Are They Worth It, and this is going to be probably my favorite book of the year, and it is How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. I absolutely loved this book. I have spoken in I think 2 videos now about it, so I'll just give you a brief synopsis. There's a pandemic in the world, and each chapter follows a different character and how they're going through the pandemic from the moment that they discover the virus to very, very far in the future, how it has reflected on humanity. There's absolutely all different characters, all different stories. There's different they focus on different things, and it doesn't really focus on the pandemic itself or the virus. It focuses on the human aspect of it. It focuses on the people in it, the families. It focuses on grief, on loss. It focuses on love, on science. It focuses on dreaming of the future, traveling in space, and all these different kinds of things. And I really love this book, and it's going to be really hard for absolutely any other book to topple this from my top this far, but you know, we don't know. I might have a different favorite, but so far this is definitely a must read, and I would recommend it to the end of the world to everyone. Oh, I forgot to mention that it's a sci-fi. The next book is another Japanese literature that I read, and it is called Convenience Store Woman. I really wanted to read Earthlings by the same author, but I was told or found out that you're supposed to read Convenience Store Woman because you might not enjoy it as much if you read it after Earthlings, because apparently people enjoy Earthlings more. So this one is a really strange one. I definitely enjoyed it a lot more than No Longer Human, and I can draw some parallels between the two, because in this one we follow a 36-year-old woman who has who has worked in a convenience store for 18 years, so most of her life. And people find her very strange and unrelatable because apparently she has some kind of issues, maybe health issues, and people just don't really think of her as a normal human. And she as well does not think of herself as a normal human, because normal humans have different lives. They go on dates, they have men, children, lovers, whatever, and she just doesn't want that. She just wants to work, and she has a very hard time relating to people, and the only place and time where she feels like a normal human is in the convenience store, because the convenience store has very strict rules on how you should behave. what you should say, what you should do, and it kind of serves as a guideline or guidebook of how to be human, how to be the perfect convenience store worker. And that's where she feels the most at home, she feels the most accepted, because she is in fact the perfect convenience store worker. So this one was an interesting read. I definitely did not enjoy parts of it just because, you know, you weren't supposed to enjoy parts of it, that's all I'm gonna say. But I really loved the ending and kind of what the book teaches you, so I did enjoy this book. And if you're in the mood of something that just kind of makes you go, yep, that's life for you, then I would recommend this book. And the last book that I read in the month of June and so far in this year is called The Binding, and I love this book. I love this book so much, and I went to it almost completely blind, because kind of what it says on the back and as a synopsis is not really what the book is about, so it's a little bit misleading. I mean, the things do happen that are said in the back on the back of this book, but I definitely think that this could have been described in a different way. So I'm not gonna try to do that, because personally I went into it, as I said, almost blind into this book, and I think that I enjoyed it a lot more because of that. So I'm not gonna spoil anything. I'm only going to tell you overall what it's about. You follow Emmett, who is a farmer boy. He lives a simple life with his family, his younger sister, his parents, and they live off the land. They have crops, they have animals, and Emmett, however, discovers that he has an ability to bind people's memories into books, and that is a very frowned upon ability to have in their world. People are looked down upon them, and they're considered evil because no book exists in this world. All of the books are people's memories, and once you bind somebody's memories into that book, the people forget their memories. So you kind of bind a part of their personality, of their soul, into a book. So naturally, when his family discovers that, they kind of shun him. So that's all I'm gonna say, because this book really is so much more. It deals with a lot of heavy things. Personally, as I went into it, I thought that it was going to be a YA story about Emmett who binds books, but it really isn't. So I would recommend looking through the trigger warnings, because there's a lot of trigger warnings. This is definitely not YA, or at least I didn't feel like it was YA. It was quite adult, it was quite dark, grim, and gritty, and there was a love story that just completely broke my heart. And the only thing that I didn't like in this book, and I've heard different opinions. Again, you can Google the trigger warnings. There's different things that people were not happy with. Personally, it didn't affect me, so just keep that in mind going into it. There are some things that you might find not great about the particular trigger warnings. The only thing that I personally did not like was the ending, just because I finished the book and I was so in love with the entire book that I completely overlooked the ending. But having a few days and weeks pass and kind of think through the ending of the book, yes, the ending is weak. It's the weakest point of the book, and I still love the book, but it is something that made me bump it down from 5 stars to 4, just because I didn't feel like it was resolved enough. Like, the one main thing was resolved, but the rest just kind of left hanging and left loose, and those were really important as well. And I think that we could have gotten at least something to a closure, or I don't know, just something, but we didn't get that. But still, I really loved this book, and all I'm gonna say is that if you liked Song of Achilles, you will enjoy this book. If you hated Song of Achilles, you will enjoy this book, because I personally hated Song of Achilles, but I really loved this book. So, that's all I'm gonna say. I hope you guys check it out. I hope you give it a read, and I would love to hear your opinions about it in the comment section down below. So that is it for all of the books that I've read in the past 3 months, which was a lot for me. So if you've read any of these books, I would love to hear your opinion in the comment section down below. That said, thank you guys so much for watching. Comment, like, and subscribe if you like what you see and would like to see more, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!